What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate that. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, we're going to get into some F1 fantasy with an off-season roundup, just kind of like a general news grab, looking at some of the stuff that has happened over the F1 offseason. It's been pretty active in the F1 world, so just wanted to touch on that as preseason testing is coming up. It's really soon. Cars will be on the track in Bahrain very, very shortly, and then the season will be here before we know it. I've got this video and one more bold predictions video in my preseason series, so make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with all of those videos, or subscribe on the audio side on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, all those fun spots. And also follow me on X at UNFPL. Changed my handle over the off season. Just shortened it a little bit. But the big news coming out of F1 right now is that there's an F1 fantasy game update. Or is there? I'm a little dubious, but they did actually acknowledge that there is an F1 fantasy game in 2024. That is very exciting. Coming soon, ... with the hourglass emoji, hashtag F1 fantasy, with a picture of Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen saying it's nearly time, ... The countdown is on. So we are getting a game, so that's good. Otherwise, the last month and a half would have been quite frustrating for nothing. But I'm glad that there will be a F1 fantasy game coming from F1.com in 2024. It was sent February 13th, so just last night, if you're watching this today. Game launched after preseason testing in 2023. So that's why I'm a little cautious if we're actually going to get that before, but possibly an earlier launch this year. They are acknowledging that there's an F1 fantasy game. So that is great news. But that is the biggest announcement, at least for us F1 fantasy players for 2024. They have acknowledged that there is a game coming. So that is great news for us. And yeah, if you follow me on X at UNFPL, I will tweet that out as soon as it is live. I will tweet out a league code. We'll be doing a league this year, so make sure to follow, and I will let you guys know. Hoping to have a great year in F1 fantasy. But getting into more general F1 news, as the offseason has been kind of wild, I've been focusing mostly on F1 fantasy content, and I will have a little kind of slant to all of this news going forward. But check out the time codes in the description below for whatever interests you. You can jump around. I know there's a lot of content to consume right now with teams launching their cars for 2024. Been having a great time watching the race with all their breakdowns. Tremendous stuff by those guys over there. First news item is Haas replaces Guenther Steiner. He was fired officially on January 10th. It came out in interviews that he kind of found out between Christmas and New Year. He has been replaced by Director of Engineering, Ayo Komatsu, who's now the team principal. Komatsu said at Haas's team launch that he is not optimistic about the early season pace. So that's not great. I am predicting, if you watched my driver price predictions episode in the preseason series that I've been doing, I do have Haas as two of the bottom three assets ahead of Logan Sargent in F1 fantasy for my price predictions. I do not expect this car to be fast. I do not expect it to be good for a long time, so they will not be options for us in F1 fantasy. I'm assuming, unless we just desperately need to get a budget guy, which we will probably need, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough. Logan Sargent far more likely to go out in Q3 than Haas, who had a few Q3 appearances last year and then just sank throughout the field on Sundays or Saturdays for the first two races of the season in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia this year. Do not get caught out by that. So that's Haas there. Next up, we've got some Grand Prix changes. Now, the official stuff that has happened is the Japanese Grand Prix has been extended to 2029 at Suzuka. So that's great news. The British Grand Prix has been extended to 2034. Also great news. The Spanish Grand Prix is moving to Madrid in 2026, which we will see how that goes. They had a little render of the circuit. It was looking kinda they like to say that it's gonna be a cross between a street circuit and a classic European circuit, but yeah, until we see that, I'm just gonna remain a little, doubtful that it's just gonna be another street track, unfortunately, getting added to the F1 calendar. And then the official news is that the Australian Grand Prix is going to return as the season opener in 2025. That was let out in a press release from the Australian Grand Prix, from the organizers, but then it was quickly retracted. It was also on the same day that Lewis Hamilton announced he was going to Ferrari, so I'm not sure if they were like, "Oh, we're not gonna get any of the spotlight here because we're returning as a season opener," so they took that back, but people caught it, and if the organizers are saying that, then I am going to assume that that is going to be true. So that will be really fun for the start of the 2025 season. Lewis Hamilton, first race in Ferrari, will be in Melbourne in Australia. Fantastic news. As for the F1 fantasy slant here, I mean, it's just in general, it's good news that better racetracks are staying on the calendar and future editions of the game. To be determined on how the Spanish Grand Prix looks in Madrid. But I mean, that would probably mean that Barcelona is leaving the calendar, which is a little sad. There's also a rumor going around that F1 desperately wants to put a race in Chicago, which would be the fourth American race on the calendar. They've trademarked a bunch of names for the Chicago Grand Prix, the North American Grand Prix, the City Grand Prix of America, or something like that. Yeah, once again, another street circuit. What, man, that's gonna be tough to watch, but hopefully they understand that we want more race tracks on the F1 calendar. So, not as much of an F1 fantasy slate for these Grand Prix changes, but it is some off-season news that you might want to know. Next up is race format changes. I think these still need to be officially ratified in whatever F1 rules constitution notebook thing that they have there. But there will be the power unit allotment has increased from 3 to 4. The sprint weekend format has changed. That will definitely affect us in F1 fantasy, as it is now looking like for a sprint weekend, it was going to be 2023's format for sprint qualifying was practice one, Grand Prix qualifying, then sprint qualifying, and the sprint on Saturday, kind of all condensed into one day, and then the Grand Prix on Sunday. Now it is going to be free practice one on a Friday. Then they're going to have sprint qualifying on Friday night or Thursday night or whenever the sprint takes place. And then the sprint race will be the morning session on Saturday, with the Grand Prix qualifying Saturday afternoon and the regular Grand Prix on Sunday. I don't know what this is going to mean for Park Fermi rules when lineups are going to lock in F1 fantasy. I will be very curious to see. My first thought would be it might not change all that much for us as F1 fantasy players, F1 fantasy managers, because we will still have a qualifying to get locked for. They didn't add, the only thing is, they didn't add any points for sprint qualifying last year when the changes were made. So if the new game, if the 2024 version comes out with points being awarded in sprint qualify or sprint shootouts, sorry, that's what they're calling them. That will mean that the lineups will likely have to lock for those races. However, if there's no sprint shootout points being awarded, I wouldn't be super opposed to just letting us watch that, have more data, and then have to lock in our lineups before the sprint shootout, because we still don't know what qualifying is. There's only top 8 points awarded in sprint races, and that's how it was in the F1 fantasy calendar. But it could be a fun little twist. Like, you might want to change your lineup if you know someone's qualifying pretty low in sprint and they have chances to get points, positions gained, overtakes in the race. Like, you may want to switch up your lineup so they have a chance to kind of increase the strategy aspect of the game if they let us not lock our lineups before the sprint shootout on Friday evenings. And another race format change is that DRS will be activated on the second lap instead of the third lap after a race start or a safety car. That could mean that Max Verstappen just pushes his way through the field a lot quicker than if like it would take for 3 laps, but we will see. I'm not sure how far back he's going to be starting in 2024, but it is just a new twist in the F1 rulebook. And then on the left here in this picture, you can see the F1 sprints for 2024. There are 6 of them. We've got China, Miami, Austria, Austin, Sao Paulo, and Qatar. Those are the 6 sprints for the F1 2024 season. Getting into some colorful, not really team launches for 2024 right now. It is launch season. McLaren beat everyone to the punch. They kind of just like dropped their livery out of the blue a couple of weeks ago, but it has officially launched season of the last week and a half. Every team has been showing us their car. Lots of carbon, lots of black. There's been a lot of backlash about that. Are we going to be able to tell the difference on with these cars on the track? But we've had some hope in the last couple of reveals. McLaren, that papaya is going to pop, as you can see, even on my shirt here, very bright. The Ferrari came out looking incredible yesterday. I was hoping for a tiny bit more yellow when I initially saw it, but then when I kind of gave it a second look, I was like, no, that's enough yellow. That looks good. So really liking the red and yellow and white accents on the Ferrari for the 2024 edition. Visa, Cash App, RB, still trying to decide what we're going to call them. Please bail us out, commentators, during preseason testing. Looking very much like a old Toro Rosso, even though they say it's not that, but definitely looks like that. But we'll be able to tell what it is on the track. Kick Sauber kicked our eyeballs in with the lime green. Aston Martin kind of staying classic, but Alpine really just got hammered for their team reveal. Not great. They were all like, it's going to be pink. It's going to be so much color. And there was just a lot of black with pink accents. Today is February 14th. So McLaren and Mercedes officially launched their cars today. We already got the McLaren livery, and Red Bull launches tomorrow. When I do my last video bold predictions, I will just include those pictures in there so we can all see them. But there's the 8 liveries of the teams that we've seen so far. Haas, which they said is not going to be very fast. McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin, Ferrari, Kick Sauber, Visa, Cash App, RB, and Williams. Williams only gave us a render. I think they have a shakedown on Friday, I believe. The other thing about launch season is that this probably could have been in like race changes, not sure. It's kind of a crossover, but they have increased the limit of the distance that they can do their shakedowns for. So, and like promotional shooting, whatever, but it was 100 kilometers, but now it's 200 kilometers. So maybe teams will get some more data and be able to make some adjustments during preseason testing with that extra 100 kilometers worth of data on their new machines. And then down there at the bottom, I have ranked the liveries so far. I would go Visa, Cash App, RB, Ferrari, and McLaren as my 3 favorites so far for the 2024 launch season. The biggest news of the entire offseason has been some driver activity. It was shaping up to be the silliest of silly seasons for 2024. On my first video, the preview palooza I did with Adam from F1 Fantasy HQ, we pretty much talked about our bold predictions, how many drivers are on the grid that could move, and it's already started. It's not the first car hasn't even hit the track in Bahrain, and we already are entering silly season. So Lando Norris has extended at McLaren until at least 2026. Charles Leclerc has extended at Ferrari until 2029, but I believe there are some exit clauses in there that he can get around. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton just dropping an absolute bombshell that he is moving to Ferrari in 2025. He activated an exit clause in his contract so he could get out. He just signed a 2-year extension last summer with Mercedes. So he was supposed to be there for this season and for next year. It did not go down like that. He is going to be in the Tifosi, getting cheered on by the Italians in red. It's going to be absolutely wild in 2025. I cannot wait to see how that's going to go down. It's going to cause a lot of drama in the paddock all year. It's going to be super awkward at today's team launch. Can't wait to watch that. Ferrari did an okay job with it yesterday. Carlos Sainz just being like, I was surprised. And then Charles Leclerc was like, well, Carlos is still my teammate. I want to respect him. We've had some great times together, but I am excited to drive with Lewis in 2025. F1 fantasy slant off of this is Mercedes car is not going to be great for 2024. And are we already kind of just going to cancel out Lewis Hamilton as an F1 fantasy asset in 2024? Because if you're Mercedes, you know that one of the greatest drivers of all time is leaving your squad. Are you going to let him in like kind of development meetings, engineering? Are you going to put the car towards him, even if he's a better driver than George Russell? Like George Russell is your future at that team for now, at least for the next couple of seasons, you would think. And aren't you just going to kind of go towards him with the car for this entire season and next season? You're not really going to do Lewis Hamilton any favors. So Lewis Hamilton, I mean, we'll see how the car looks, but it doesn't seem like a vote of confidence for the Silver Arrows if Hamilton is already like, nah, get me out of here. I'm going to Ferrari. It did turn out that Charles Leclerc said yesterday in Ferrari's car launch that he knew about Lewis Hamilton signing with Ferrari before he extended at Ferrari. So that is a little interesting because that news didn't come out until about a week after Charles extended with the Stallions in Italy. So just, yeah, lots to kind of break down there. But it also makes me think that Charles and Lando believe in the projects of their team because there's a lot of chatter about Lando Norris potentially going to Red Bull next year with Sergio Perez's seat up for grabs. Speaking of Sergio Perez, this is the graphic I had with Adam in the preview Palooza, my first video of the preseason. Go check that out on the channel. This graphic did not even include Lewis Hamilton because I did not think he was going to be a part of silly season for 2024, but there he is. So I've got all the drivers here. It's a lot. There's a lot of guys without contracts. The only caveat here is Alexander Albon. James Vowles, the team principal for Williams, has come out and said that Alex Albon is signed with Williams through 2025. Does that mean Alexander Albon is going to be on Williams in 2025? I'm not sure. If another team comes calling, like knocking on his door, Red Bull, Mercedes, like it would be really hard for Albon to pass that up. There is a lot of young F2 drivers coming up, and a lot of competition is going to be had for that second Red Bull seat and that second Mercedes seat. They have a really good F3 talent coming along. Gonna butcher it, Kimi Antonelli or something like that. I will get more familiar with that maybe for the 2026 F1 Fantasy Edition. Rumors are also Fernando Alonso might be looking at Mercedes second seat. I mean, it would be phenomenal if he was in Mercedes second seat or Red Bull second seat. That would be fantastic content for all F1 content creators in general. But here are all the drivers. So Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, he's definitely not going to be at Ferrari. That's all we know. My bold prediction in that preview Palooza show was that he would end up at Red Bull in the second seat. So we'll see how that works out. Step one accomplished, not at Ferrari. Step two needs to go to Red Bull. The early rumors are that he will be at Audi whenever that transition takes place for the Kick Sauber team that is going to be called Stake F1, but can't be called Stake F1 because they don't have a license. Yikes. That's seems like a big mess, but I don't know anything about that, so I won't get into it too much. Fernando Alonso, potentially out of contract at the end of 2024. Lance Stroll just kind of rolling along with Aston Martin. I think he will be a part of that team as long as his dad owns it. Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, both going to be out of contract for Alpine, so the all-French brigade over at Enstone will be broken up by the end of 2025, I would assume. Valtteri Bottas, Joe Guan Yu over at Kick Sauber, Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hulkenberg, Kevin Magnussen, Alexander Albon, and Logan Sargent. Those are all the guys that do not have a contract for 2025 as of right now. So lots of movement. It's going to be great. I think it's going to cause a lot of chaos in F1 fantasy because, I mean, these guys are still human. They're still going to have a lot going on in their head with their contract situation. not resolved. So that could be something to think about as well. But I would assume that it's going to wait until the summer break like it did a couple of seasons ago. But we'll see. It's already kicked off. Hamilton, Lando, Charles Leclerc, all just kind of getting that sorted before the season even begins. But that is going to do it for my off-season roundup. Second to last preseason video, I'll do a bold predictions video, like I said earlier, and then it will be F1 fantasy season content. It is going to go down. It's going to be great. Race previews every single week. So like and subscribe to the channel or the podcast if you're listening on the audio side, so you do not miss a second of content. Also follow me on X at UNFPL, because I will tweet out whenever the game goes live with my league code and just generally freaking out about driver prices. We'll see how my price predictions came out compared to those as well. But enjoy the last few car launches. I will be back next week with a bold predictions video. And once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will talk to you next time.